Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. Before we get too far into the video, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, that really helps to get my channel promoted, and I do appreciate that. I also love it when people leave comments, so if you wanted to ask a question or leave a suggestion for a video or tell me how you do things or, whatever. So a while back I did a ring that was sort of inspired by another one I saw online, I think, and it was one that kind of appeared from the top to not really have a ring at all. It just makes it look like you have the components of the head of the ring kind of sitting on the back of your hand. And so I thought I'd do another one of those. This one with a little bit different style. And I picked out some pretty stones. I got a Morganite that's pear-shaped, and I have 3 Marquise that are amethyst that I think will pair nicely with that. So we'll see how it looks when we're done. Before we get started, I need to thank some people. The first group is my patrons over on Patreon, and I have a number of new ones. I have Eileen M., Lena P., and John P. I wanted to thank you all for signing up for my Patreon. I think, as I have, you'll find that it's a really nice group of people over there, and they have a lot of knowledge and a lot of talent, and it's great to interact with them. So enjoy that, and thank you all for your support. The other group is my YouTube subscribers, and I wanted to thank you all for signing up. I have 16,200 and some now, which is amazing. I never ever thought I'd get to that point as far as followers, so thank you for that. It's super nice to hear that I'm helping people, so I've had a number of comments lately where people said that they were really got motivated by my videos, and I appreciate that, so thanks for that. And I do appreciate the buy me a coffees and the super thanks. Those things help a lot with supplies, so you guys rock. I appreciate you. So with those things being said, let's get started on this project. This is one of my design idea notebooks you can buy off of my merch store. On the recent ones, I've started to put some useful charts. This particular chart is fractions of an inch to decimals to millimeter conversions, and I find that super handy since I've been trying to use the metric system more often. But there's a number of them, and they have different useful information on the backs, so check those out if you're interested. I like that they have this grid in the background because it allows me to kind of make things more symmetrical, since I don't particularly draw well, honestly. Alright, so my thought was a lot of times what these are is basically a U-shaped band, and then that's kind of concealed by whatever is mounted on top of the band. So I'm going to do 4 faceted stones. So this is probably, they're going to be bezel set, and this is probably intermediate to early advanced project. I have 3 of these amethysts, which I think are pretty. They're what are they, 9x7s, I think? No, 10x5s. Yeah, they're long and skinny ones, kind of. And let's see, where's that? I also have this Morganite, which, if you're not familiar with Morganite, it's the pink version of beryl, the same mineral as aquamarine and emerald. It actually comes in a whole bunch of different colors. Heliodor is the yellow version. I think Goshenite, if I remember, is the colorless variety. And there's even a green variety that's not considered emerald. I think they just call it green beryl. But recently, not recently, but I think in the 20th century they discovered red beryl in Utah. If I remember, it was the 20th century, but I'm not sure. And that's super, super rare and pretty small pieces, but it's very pretty. So this is pink beryl. And so we'll put that there. We'll have 3 of these, and I'm going to mount them on a piece of 12 gauge flattened square wire that I've kind of flattened out with a rolling mill. Like that. It's about 1 millimeter thick. So we'll bend that so it has some strength going this way, and I'm going to mount those 3 bezels on top of that. And I'll mount this one just right on the actual half round. So let's make a bezel. I'm probably only going to make one of them in front of you because I'm going to be just repeating the same kind of thing. So let's talk about some stuff that I use. I use hard silver sheet solder primarily. I use a liquid flux that I dribble on with a dropper bottle like that, and occasionally I'll spray it on with a spray bottle. The torch that I use is a Silversmith model. It's their acetylene air torch, and I think it's a great torch for this. And I usually use a #1 tip on it. That's most of the questions that people usually ask me. But feel free, like I said in the comments, to ask me other questions if you don't know the answer. There's nothing wrong with asking questions. I don't know everything about this particular discipline. I know some stuff, so if I know, I'll tell you what I know. Alright, so let's make a bezel for this guy. I'm going to use, the materials I'm going to use, I already told you about the 12 gauge. 12 gauge is 2.01 millimeters. But like I said, I'm flattening it out. The band, I think I'm going to make it out of 8 gauge half round, which, if I remember right, is 3.25 millimeters wide. I forgot to write that down on this, but I think that's right. The bezel I'm going to use is pretty thin, but tall. I'm using 3/16 inch, which is 4.76 millimeters in height. And I'm going to use 28 gauge for this because of the sharp corners on the stones. It makes it a little bit easier to bezel set faceted stones with sharp corners like this. Something that people have been asking me lately, at least a few times, is if I would show how I get the bezel ready to set a stone like a marquise or a pear shape with a sharp tip on it. And I'll do that for you today. So to create the step in the bezels, I'm going to be using 18 gauge round wire, which I put multiple layers of it in order to elevate the stone so it has a place for the point on the pavilion to rest and to keep it from sticking out of the back of the bezel, as well as to produce more light getting to the stone. So, alright, so let's grab some of that bezel. Like I said, it's pretty thin. Let's file the end flat to start with. When you're doing a bezel for something like this, you never want to solder the bezel closed right at the tip. So I'm going to measure by starting it so it's partway down the side like that. I find that that works a little bit better for me. So we'll make our first bend right there. I'm going to kind of round the bezel a little bit like that, since the shape of the stone is a little bit curved like that. I'll try and fit it in there. Let's curve this just a little bit more. I'm trying to kind of make a bend right there where the tip is. Sometimes it's hard to get it right in the right spot. So I can see a little excess space. So when I make the mark to where I'm going to cut this, I'm going to compensate for that extra space by making it a little further along than I normally would. So normally I'd go a little bit past, but since I can see some excess space up here, I'm going to go pretty close to right where they come together. And then when I file it, it should come out to be a pretty good fit, with a little luck anyway. You can make step bezels this way. There's other ways to do it too. You could lay a piece of sheet or another piece of bezel on the inside, offset from the top of this one to create a lip. I just like to do it with a little 18 gauge round wire because it's easy to solder in and stack up to the height you want. You can also buy pre-made ones if you want to, although it's nice to be able to make your own if you have unusually shaped stones. Okay, so let's solder this guy. I got a little bit of solder I cut earlier, so I'm going to use a piece of that. I'm going to throw another little piece for that. Now we'll do a little bit of reshaping. One thing when you're dealing with marquise or things with sharp points, I'm in the habit of kind of pushing a stone down over the top of it like that to see if it's how close I am on size. And you got to be a little careful with marquise because the tips can snap off pretty easily. So I try not to force them into the bezel. I've broken a few stones that way, and I always feel bad afterwards. I think we're pretty good on the size. I just got to get it shaped a little bit better. Then we'll start making those little rings to build up the step. I think that's pretty good. So let's grab some 18 gauge. This is just 18 gauge round silver. I like to go in just a little bit more than I need probably, so if I hold that up like that, you can kind of see I got plenty. Then I'm going to file kind of a diagonal notch with the edge of my file. Doesn't have to be very deep really. Just enough to where I can bend it sharply there. Two or three strokes usually does it. We'll bend this around like this. Kind of adjust it over and over again until I get it pretty close. And we'll cut it off. Still a little big, that's good. I like to cut it slightly big because then I can gradually snip out pieces until it's just about right. That's pretty good. So I'm going to do a second one to make a second layer, and then we will solder those in. That one's good. I think that one's going to be the bottom one. I usually try to get the one that fits the best. Put that one on the bottom. That way the side that can be seen really is a little bit neater. I'm just pushing the second one down on top of it. You want to make sure they're pretty flat too. Otherwise you'll have kind of a wonky surface to set your stone on. Nobody wants that. So I think I'll just put a little pile of these pieces of solder over here. We'll flux it and set it right on top of them. And heat it to the flow point. It should just kind of draw them right up in there. I got enough here. Let's give it a little bit of a file on the bottom, and if we need to, I'll do a secondary solder. That'll work just fine. Alright, so I kind of want to make this piece curve nicely like that, so I need to figure out a way to do that. One way, we could just try to use our little bail making pliers and see if we can curve it sideways like that, or if it looks good when we do. Let's just grab it like that. It's actually not too bad. I think I can just take a segment out of that like that. There you are. It's got a little sharper of a curve over here. I may need to do some adjustments. That looks a little more symmetrical. Okay, I'm going to make the rest of those bezels, then I'll be right back. Okay, that's what it's going to look like, I think. So let's push these stones out. This Morganite has a really deep pavilion. Look at it. So I had to do 3 layers of wire in this one. And it's probably going to require me to do a little bit of shaping of the inside of that lip with some diamond burrs with my rotary tool to get it to sit down just a tiny bit, because it's real close to the top. So I'll probably have to drop it down just a little bit by using my Dremel. You can also use just a ball burr in there sometimes to clean that up. Okay, so I think, let's see if we can get these lined up nicely and soldered on. It looks like a smiley face. I'm going to use this piece to raise it up on this side. No, actually I'm going to do something that's less likely to solder to it. How about a T-pin or something? Let's give that a shot. We can always move them a little bit if we need to, probably. So I do something called pick soldering, which is pretty handy sometimes. And if I can find my pick, there it is. I can put a link up here if you're interested in seeing how to do that in more detail. It's a nice way to get solder where you want it to be. With these ones, there's some solder already in the bottom where I soldered those little steps in made out of wire. But if I pick up some extra here in case I need it, I can get these soldered in place if they don't stick down on their own. But I need to get the bezels and that little bar, up to that solder flow point. Well, I think I got them on there. Let's take a look. So, it's going to go just like this. And so we need a ring that's going to go from here over to here. And I wanted to make it, what size did I mark that at? I cut a little strip of paper. I think I did a 7 here. So, and when I'm doing a particular ring size, I usually add about 1/8 of an inch, or 2 millimeters, I guess. And that would, if we were doing a complete circle. So I don't want it to be a complete circle. I want it to have about that much space cut out of it. So let's deduct a little bit less than that, so I have some room to work with. But Let's cut it to be about like that. And I think we'll go from there. I don't think this is going to be a terribly difficult ring. It just took a while to make all those bezels. Okay, so I filed the end flat. Let's make sure everything's kind of straight. That looks pretty good. Let's start small on the mandrel up here. Near the top. Bend it around there. Try and get it tight when it's on a smaller size than I want it to be. That way it'll maintain its roundness as we slide it up. If that makes any sense. When you're doing a size, you want it to fall to that size. That's pretty close to a 7 right there. Actually, went a little bit too far. Alright, let's file a flat spot up here. You can use your miter bias jig if you want to for this, if you have one of those. So that's kind of what we want it to do, is be concealed behind those two stones, like that. So really all you see on top of the finger is the stones. That looks pretty good. Let's give that a go. So I'm just going to pick a little solder on either side there. After we flux it, of course. Haha, I didn't get that side. Look at that. I think I got the other side though. That's pretty good. Let's give that another try. Oops. What likely happened is I probably had one or the other up to temperature, but not both at the same time. There's a lot more mass in this piece over here now because it's all kind of one versus this little bezel down here. I keep moving stuff around tonight. Okay, let's see if we got it on that. And if we got it on straight. Probably not as straight as I had it before. But I think it's on there though. Let's see. I would imagine you'd wear it on one of these fingers like that. And most of that stuff should be covered up by the stones, except for the, the archy shape there. But let's let that pickle, and then we'll set some stones after it's polished. I might do a little work hardening on this to make it springier too, so it's stiff. But let's get it cleaned up in the pickle for a while. Okay, it's starting to come together here. I've got 3 of the stones set. I left this one so you guys could watch. And one of the things, this is what I was talking about earlier, when you have a point on a bezel set faceted stone, or even a cabochon sometimes, there's too much metal at the ends here to compress over the tip of that. And so if you thin it out at the top of the bezel, just about half as thick as it really is, the rest of it, just kind of reduce the volume of metal that's right in that corner there. Same way at the top of this bezel, or this corner, I should say. So just reduce the amount of metal there, and that makes it so you can compress that in there a little easier. I've seen some really weird ways that people end sharp corners like that, and I've never been super pleased with any of them, but this seems to work pretty well. So I do this a little differently than some people. I use this as my bezel pusher and the outside rounded part as my burnisher. But I'm just going to start by trying to kind of push it in just a little bit on either side, kind of get it in place. Make sure it's staying flat. We'll push it down a little bit over here. A little bit right there. A bit over here. There. Let's take those corners right over now. Once I feel like it's in there pretty well, then I'm going to use this side to kind of burnish that top edge. So, last thing, I probably will make sure this is where I want it to be. So the last thing I'll do is I'll use a fine polishing wheel on my Dremel and clean up the tops of the bezels, and then we'll see if we can't get some better pictures. So it should look kind of like that, like the things are just sitting on top of your hand. So, alright, while I do that, I'll get some better pictures and put them at the end. Okay, well that was the illusion ring number 2, and I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, make sure to hit the like button before you leave. And also, I'd love it if you take a moment and check out my main channel page. I put out a lot of content. I've been making videos for around 3 years now at 3 per week. And so I've accrued about almost 415, I think, now. So there's tons of content, and I think you'll find that there's probably something else here that you'd like as well. So check those out, come back and subscribe, and don't forget to hit the video description down below. There's some links that might be important to you. If you want to find out about my Patreon, there's a link there for that. There's a link where you can get my ebook if you're interested in that guide to 2023's tutorials. I think it's a useful way to be able to access those. And finally, there's a link to my merch store where you can get those nice design idea books that I showed you at the beginning. So, all right, well, thanks for coming. I do appreciate you taking the time to watch my videos. Take care. Happy silversmithing.